Star Trek Picard Season 2, Episode 4 boldly goes where every single Star Trek time travel episode has gone before. Now, while that's not necessarily a bad thing, this episode is chock full of references, recreations to almost every era of Star Trek that we've seen before, mostly references to time travel episodes, but not always. It's called Watcher, and that is a very apt title because it seems like as watchers, as the audience, we have seen a lot of this before and we can relate. So we start off where we left off before, Chateau Picard in the La Serena, or whatever it's called in this timeline. And it's Picard trying to reach Rios. We know that can't happen because Rios was abducted by ice without his communicator. So after a little bit of time, they can't reach him. Find out the ship has a cloaking device, which they chose not to activate before, and Jurati and Picard beam to Chateau Picard, which is completely abandoned. Now, Picard has another flashback to his childhood, which didn't really reveal much to us, and he tells Jurati that his family, at least his ancestors, had abandoned this place back during World War II after France was occupied by the German Nazis, and they took over the place and used it as a base of operations, I guess. So that might be this show's explanation as to why Picard, a Frenchman, has the accent of an Englishman, because his family had to flee France and they developed that English accent. Wasn't something we needed, not even sure if that's what they're going for, but it was a nice touch that they're trying to explain that 40 years later. So after a little bit of rummaging through the house, Jurati goes through the books, goes through a bucket in the middle of the floor which had some wine in it. Every time she keeps picking something out, it has the reference to the number 15. Now, if, as we recall back in the third episode, I believe, when she merged with the Borg Queen and got the coordinates for the change in time, she also got the number 15. Now, after approximately 3.2 seconds of back and forth of whether or not 15 means hours, days, weeks, they have to save the timeline, they determine April 15th is when the timeline is going to change, and they are in April 12th of 2024, so they have approximately 3 days to save the world. Are they going to do it? Obviously, they're going to do it. So now we have to figure out how and why the timeline is going to change, and how are we going to do that in time? Well, let's go to Rafi and 7 of 9 to try and figure that out. Now, Rafi, 7 of 9, Annika Hansen, they're on a bus in LA in the middle of the day. Why did it go from night with Picard to day now? I can only imagine there's a time skip, but I don't think they really explain that. On the bus is this gentleman here, who you may recognize as the exact same guy playing the exact same song with the almost exact same boombox clothes and hair from Star Trek 4, The Voyage Home in 1986, San Diego or San Francisco. Can't remember which one that took place in. Playing the same song on the bus, getting yelled at again. Now, this is 38 years later in a slightly different city, so he must not have been doing anything with his life over the last 38 years rather. Kind of played for laughs, very, very on the nose, and that's something we're going to come to notice in this episode, is that a lot of references are on the nose or things that we have seen before in Star Trek, primarily from time travel episodes. So 7 of 9 yells at him, and he immediately apologizes and turns the music off. I am taking this to be kind of a callback to the fact that the last time he got yelled at and didn't turn off the music, he got a Vulcan nerve pinch and passed out. I'm not sure that's what they're going for. I hope it is, because I don't like the fact that he immediately turns it off for 7 of 9 and didn't for Kirk and Spock, but I don't know. Maybe it was just supposed to be a fun reference. It was nice seeing him again, and that song is always great, so fun times all around. After that, they bounce back to the ship. Now, Jurati and Picard are back on the ship, assuming they had a nice night at Chateau Picard, slept it off, and are now in the morning trying to get some work done. A lot more back and forth between the Borg Queen and Jurati. We'll see that a couple more times this episode. Honestly, it's getting a little much. I mean, I think what happened is Jurati and the Borg Queen traded a little bit of their minds, and now they're kind of the same person, bantering back and forth with each other. It's good. It gives Jurati something to do, but it seems like a lot of padding, a lot of unnecessary dialogue just for the sake of adding more character time to the show, which we don't need. We just need to deal with this threat. Then she gets the transporters working, beams Picard off the ship to where the coordinates roughly are for the Watcher, and surprise, 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 it's 10 forward. Not the bar on the ship, but 10 forward in Los Angeles in 2024, where, as we know, in the future, our friend Guinan is bartending. Who will be here this time? Why, it is, well, not Whoopi Goldberg, another actress playing a younger version of Guinan. And this brings in a couple of problems with the timeline and just different aspects of the show. Number one, she has no idea who Picard is. Now, as we've already figured out before, time has not yet changed. We have at least 2 more days until time changes, if not 3. That meaning everything that's occurred in the Star Trek universe up until this point should have still occurred. Picard met Guinan for the first time after a time travel shenanigan back in the late 1800s. That being said, Picard knows Guinan. Guinan should remember Picard from that meeting. There should be no reason why they don't know each other. I get that they're probably trying to say time has changed, but based on the rules of time travel, that meeting should not have changed because it predates the change in time. So they have a little banter. Guinan is fed up with Earth right now. Things are really, really bad. She wants to get the hell out of Dodge. In fact, she's closing the bar right now, and she doesn't care for this old man, thinks he's there to loot it. They have a bit of a back and forth, a conversation. Picard won't tell her who he is, but does say that he needs her help. Now, this also brings to question a bit of a problem with the timeline, as insofar as it's 2024 and Guinan is running a bar on 10 Forward Street called 10 Forward. If she never met Picard in the late 1800s, she wouldn't have reference to the fact that she would work in a bar called 10 Forward. So that negates the fact that she named this bar as a tongue-in-cheek reference to the bar she knows she'll run in the future. So that's fine. Let's put that aside. Then she moves to the Enterprise D, and the bar is called 10 Forward there because it's on Deck 10, the forward section. Then, at some point, she leaves the Enterprise D and comes back to run this bar called 10 Forward. So the timelines don't match up, the naming conventions don't match up, and it's causing a time travel headache that I really don't think they paid any attention to, so why am I? So after this scene, they kind of cut back to the Rafi and Annika Hansen storyline. Now, something that happened earlier is Annika and Seven, they went into the clinic where Rios had been abducted. Don't take his comm badge. Find out he was taken and leave immediately without taking his comm badge. That seems like a serious breach of temporal prime directive, and something that, if they don't reference it later, is a huge dangling plot thread. This guy tells them that the LAPD won't be able to help because ICE is a whole separate thing. I don't know why. I'm just going to reference this now in case it becomes important later. Is this guy supposed to be Gabriel Bell, the non-Avery Brooks Cisco version? That actor died, so obviously this would be a new guy. There's no reason for me to think that. I don't even know why he would be here, but just bringing it up in case they come back to that point later, is the reason Gabriel Bell does not start the Gabriel Bell riots because he interacted with our Star Trek Picard people? Probably not. Just wanted to mention it in case they come back to it. Go back to Rios in his holding cell with Teresa and some other people that have been captured. They have a nice back and forth. I really like them as actors. I like their chemistry. I like their scenes. I don't care about the storyline. The storyline is only here to drag out our story and to make cultural references to current day world. It's not bad. Again, I really like this, but we don't need it. It's literally here as just padding to keep our characters apart until they can all come together and solve this problem. Then we skip back to Guinan's bar, 10 Forward, and who should walk in? Q. Not the Q you might think. No, it's not Quinn. It's not John Delancey. It's not Lady Q. It's not Q Jr. It's Q from Impractical Jokers. Now, I get that he's a nerd. Maybe he's a Star Trek fan. Maybe they brought him in because they thought it'd be funny to have Q in a season dealing with Q. Either way, It kind of takes you out of the scene if you know him, but it's great. I like him. He's one of my favorite people on that show, if not my favorite. So having him in this episode actually is fun. He doesn't have much to do. Basically, he's there to take Guinan's dog, Luna, to go live with him. Now, this dog looks very, very similar to the dog Picard has in the future. So whether or not they're going to place some sort of reference to the fact that this is a great, great ancestor and eventually number one is a direct descendant of this dog, I don't know. It might be interesting if that's the case. I know Picard Patrick Stewart in real life is a big proponent of these dogs, so maybe he just wants to bring them in as much as possible. That's yet to be seen. Then we cut back, back and forth, back and forth. Now we're back with Rafi and Annika Hansen. Rafi losing her mind. She's still dealing with the fact that Eleanor died. She's not having any of it. I get that she's supposed to be going through a lot right now. But everything we have seen in Star Trek, Discovery aside, up to this point, is that Starfleet officers are substantially more balanced than this for the most part. We've had instances of them going off the deep end, like Captain Decker, I want to say, from the original series, when his entire crew died, he went a little insane. I get that. But most Starfleet officers have a protocol where they can deal with this, and especially someone that would have been promoted back to captain. In season 1, she left Starfleet. Somewhere between season 1 and now, she was reinstated as the captain of the Excelsior, and she can't deal with the loss of one person who, by the way, we never on screen saw her develop a relationship with Eleanor. So that is all off-screen tragedy that we are trying to comprehend because we never saw them develop any sort of friendship. So whether or not there's something else going on, I doubt it. But I feel like they're just trying to manufacture stress, manufacture grief, manufacture a reason for her to fly off the handle. That as a captain in Starfleet, she should be putting the mission first. As Picard said to Wesley in TNG, there's a time and a place for grief. We need to do this mission and we can deal with that stuff later. If she can't deal with the mission, they're never going to get back to the future and save Eleanor, assuming they can. So anyway, she breaks into this police car. They go on a chase that honestly wasn't that interesting. It was fine for what it was, but again, a police chase, a car chase. Again, another way to fill time. The only thing I noticed here that was a little interesting is Seven of Mine kept saying vehicle. I don't know if that's a reference to something, but it was kind of interesting. Then we go back to Picard and Guinan. As you can see in the background here, we've got Floyd's Barbershop. That's another reference to Star Trek time travel, as well as to the Andy Griffith Show in general. Now, back in City on the Edge of Forever, they used the sets from the Andy Griffith Show, so Floyd's Barbershop was one of the backgrounds in that episode, which was set in 1930s New York City. Obviously, this is not supposed to be the same street, but it is a great callback for a great time travel episode, which I think is the main point they're trying to do in this episode. So she has another conversation. Picard finally relents, tells him who he is, what she is to him, and that he's looking for the Watcher. She finally admits, I'm not the damn Watcher you're looking for. You're going to go find her. I'll help you. But I also want to get off this planet that's going to hell right now. She's basically had enough of humanity, thinks that they're not changing fast enough, and they've had a lot of time to do it. She wants out. Then we go back to Rios, and this might be my favorite scene of the episode. It doesn't really pertain to anything, but Rios decides to tell the guard who he is, and he goes into detail about the whole plot synopsis of Star Trek Picard, basically, that he's from the future, he's a captain, he's going back in time, got to save things from the evil Borg Queen who wants to eliminate humanity, and then he has this great moment where he says that, and apparently this guy that's in charge of us, he's a human that's now living in a synthetic android body, but nobody bothered to explain to me how that worked. I think that whole thing was supposed to be an audience surrogate moment of the audience not really understanding what the hell's going on with Picard in a synthetic body. I loved it. I thought it was a great moment for the fans that are kind of on their, scratching their heads over what's going on with it. Then we bounce back, another scene of Jurati and the Borg Queen bantering to get the transporters working. It's fine. It just seems like more of the same that we don't need. We're 4 episodes in, and they're purposely making the story only move so far ahead and then filling the rest of the hour with stuff we don't need, just so the story takes longer to resolve. She gets the transporter working. 7 of 9 and Rafi are beamed away closer to where Rios is being taken in his detention bus. And that's basically the last we see of them in this episode. So we can bounce back to Picard and Guinan again. And this comes into play to a theory that I brought up just a couple of days ago. Who is the Watcher going to be? And I think, based on this scene, my main selection is probably going to be correct, if not in name, at least in execution. So right here, we've got Guinan saying that there are these people on Earth, not even just on Earth, throughout the galaxy, that are called the Watchers. They're supervisors, and they're basically assigned to guide destiny. They like to think of themselves as guardian angels, and they're here on an assignment. Now, Assignment Earth is the episode where we met Gary Seven in the original series. He was a supervisor sent here to kind of guide the destiny of humanity to keep us from destroying ourselves. All of those things seem like a direct reference to Gary Seven and his mission, if not Gary Seven himself, another supervisor, or perhaps his partner, as in a moment we will see who the Watcher actually is. Behind Guinan, while she's talking about these guardian angels, we see a picture of the Virgin Mary, the Virgin Mother. Probably just some great background information. Hope they're not trying to tie these people in with actual religion. Here is Gary Seven with his cat, whom had the ability to shapeshift into a humanoid woman. Based on what we're about to see in a couple of moments, let me skip to that so I can show you. This is the woman who is the Watcher. It's Laris, but not Laris. She's obviously not Romulan. She's got human eyes, human ears, no forehead ridges. Is she actually Laris? I don't believe so. I think she could be that cat. She may be Isis from the Gary Seven episode. Maybe Gary Seven is gone and she's in charge. Maybe he's still around on another mission. Maybe she's another agent. I don't know, but I think this lends a hell of a lot of credence to the fact that Gary Seven is related to the Watchers, if not in name, by reputation, by species, by race. Heck, I really hope this is actually Isis. That would be great. That would be fantastic, because Gary Seven was supposed to be a spin-off to a show that never got produced. I don't know why, but if Paramount Plus wants to, that might be something they would be thinking about spinning off into its own show. Some sort of Assignment Earth type James Bondy alien something. Whether or not they would want to connect it to the Star Trek universe, I don't know, but they seem to be throwing as much Star Trek at the wall as they can. So, not trying to give them ideas, but it seems like that might be something they'd want to do. Then, after this meeting with the Watcher, we cut back to somebody who is clearly John Delancey narrating, I don't know if it's actually from a book, a famous quote, a movie, but basically saying, "You can't do it, and you know it. Oh, sure, you played the game for a while, when nothing was at stake, when the only challenge was fooling everybody into thinking you had the nerve. But now it's real, and the fear is choking you. Well, here's the truth. You can't do it. People are going to die. And now your fear, your doubt, is the loudest voice in your head." So I don't know if he's talking about himself, if he's talking about Picard, or if he's just in generally talking about the woman that we're seeing in this scene as well. But it lends credence to the fact that something's wrong with him, and time is going to be changed, and there's not much he can do about it. Now here comes Fast and Furious, a lot of Easter eggs about past Star Trek. Right here we can see Brenner fights unionization. Now Brenner was actually a character we met a couple of months from now in the episode of Deep Space Nine where they went back to 2024. Christopher Brenner, he was a businessman, owned Brenner Information Systems. That's the guy that Dax met, who had, I believe he invented something they called Internet 2.0. He was some huge tech billionaire, millionaire. I'm not sure if they said how much he was worth. So that's a reference to that past tense episode. Now, in the same newspaper, we see some space travel stuff, which will come into play in just a moment. So here, in the meantime, we've got another reference to Dixon Hill. Earlier, Girardi called Picard Dixon Hill for figuring out the 15 thing. Obviously, we know he loved Dixon Hill holodeck programs. This is called the Pallid Sun. Now, obviously, to me at least, that looks like a characterized version of Data from when he visited the holodeck. The Pallid Sun obviously could reference the skin of Data, very pale-skinned individual. Sun, obviously, he was the son of Soong. We know we're going to see a Soong later on. I think this is just a bunch of references wrapped up into one, because we also have Tracy Torme, who may have been the original author of Dixon Hill mentioned earlier on, but he was also heavily involved in Star Trek The Next Generation and Sliders. So he was heavily involved into the late 80s, early 90s sci-fi realm. Heck, he might have even had something to do with Stargate. I'm not sure. So great references here. That book is just filled with them. And then our last reference to another episode of Star Trek, Jackson Roykirk Plaza. Now, Jackson Roykirk was not from a time travel episode of the original series, but he was from the episode The Changeling, where the Nomad probe collided with some other Tenro probe, an alien probe. They kind of mashed together and got their programming scrambled. The basis of that was used to create Voyager, not in practice, but in behind-the-scenes storyline. And what happened is this probe contacted the Enterprise, Kirk's Enterprise, and was doing a whole bunch of shenanigans until Kirk said, "I'm Kirk, stop." And it's like, oh, Roy Kirk, my creator is Kirk. So that was a fun episode. It's also the one where Uhura got her entire memory erased and then re-downloaded. A lot of weird stuff that wouldn't actually take place, but a reference to something that happened around this time. I believe they said Nomad was launched in the early 21st century. Memory Alpha has it at 2002. So a lot of these spacefaring, space traveling things we've seen throughout this season are references to the early 21st, late 20th century stuff that the original Star Trek had predicted. So it's really fun to see these references, even if they're not going to be brought into the story. If they're just background references, that's great. It shows that the creators of Star Trek are actively trying to tie this in with stuff we've seen before, even if they're not always doing a great job. So, like I said, Gary Seven being related to the Watcher that we're about to meet in next episode. I mean, we met her, but we didn't really have a conversation. I think that's great. I think whatever's going on with Q could be the basis for the rest of season 3. I think they're going to fix time, but then Q might not be fixed, so that might be where we're going. And I think that the whole recasting of Guinan, well, not great, I guess worked. My only thoughts on that are they must have written in that line about Guinan aging herself because Whoopi Goldberg wouldn't come back or couldn't come back to film all the scenes they needed. It's just it's like they're trying to fit things in, but while they're fitting things in, they're also trampling on the timeline. They're trampling on continuity a little bit here. I don't think they're going to explain things, and as somebody who's really into continuity, I think that's a problem for me, but it's not something I'm willing to, leave on the floor and not look past and give up on this show. If they can improve the pacing, if they can give us a good payoff, if they can, leave us feeling like we care about these characters at the end of this season, it will be a huge step up from most of the storytelling in season 1 and all of the storytelling in Star Trek Discovery. So until next time, I'm going to be signing off for now. Hopefully I'll have a new theory coming at you soon, but if not, I'll see you next time, computer and program.